I'm going to call the policy meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. Glad you're all here today. Ms. Godesky, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Wildeboer?
Present.
Mr. Perry?
Present.
Ms. Justice?
Okay, and I do declare we have a quorum present. This time we will do the pledge, but before we stand to do that, I would like to introduce Pastor Julia Hayes, the Associate Pastor from Wrightsville United Methodist Church, and she'll be doing our invocation afterwards. Again, it's great to have a live person here doing it, so I'm so excited. So, Mr. Perry, would you lead us in the pledge today, sir?
Yeah. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I just have to lean into it, or?
No, it'll pick you up.
Okay, wonderful. Would you pray with me now? Holy and loving God, I thank you so much for gathering us together today. God, I thank you for each and every person in this room. Thank you for calling them to this important work of supporting education through policy creation. God, I pray that in this time of their meeting that they would have your spirit to guide them, that you would give them a vision of justice for all that would guide their decision making. Anytime that they are at an impasse and unsure what direction to go, Lord, would you show them the path forward? We pray that you would help each person to speak well in such a way that they'd be understood by others, and that you would open all of our ears up to hear from you and one another, so that together we might discern what is your good and perfect will that brings about justice and goodness for all people and for all of the students involved. We love you, and it is in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Nice to meet you.
Wonderful to be with you all today.
Thank you. And again, thank you to Pastor Hayes for being here today. Thank you very much. We will carry on with the approval of the agenda. I'll make that motion. I make a motion we approve the agenda as provided.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes 2-0. All right. Then we have the approval of the minutes. Do that. We have the minutes from the May meeting. I'll go ahead and make the motion to approve the minutes as provided.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes again 2-0. We will carry on. Oh, I do want to take just a second before we go on to again congratulate all our graduates. I was going to do that at the beginning, but kind of got off kilter there a little bit. But we have had some great graduations in the last couple weeks, and it's just been wonderful, and just a real honor to be part of those graduations. So it was very, very nice and very enjoyable. And again, we just wish the very best to all our graduates. We're going to carry on. We'll start with policy 2210, which is the duty of officers. I was asked to add some verbiage to that, which I did. Go down to that. It's actually in two separate areas. We're looking at the section, the first section talks about what the duties of the chair are, and we've added quite a lot. Actually got a lot of this verbiage from actually a different state. I think it was Kansas that had a lot of this in here. Also, some help from some of our board members and some ideas. But I'd like to move that on to the full board. I'll make that motion.
I'll second it for purposes of discussion.
Any discussion?
Yes.
Okay.
I was wondering if adding an amendment to the policy proposal to allow the chair to delegate some of her duties when appropriate would be in order. or let's have some discussion around that, or like what people's thoughts are, especially our chair, since she is here today.
Well, I think that, I'll be honest, I think that we already have a lot of that in there where that she can delegate. I mean, I'll be honest, we had a, Ms. Mason will remember this, quite a lengthy discussion with a former board member when I delegated, some of the authority during the called audience to the vice chair, which she continues to, and she was the vice chair at that time when I did it, and then she just continued that. But, I mean, I think that we, but anyway, what would you like to add, sir?
Just a small sentence saying the chair may delegate her duties as they deem appropriate.
Okay, where would you say we should put that? Maybe under I? Maybe have an I, maybe?
Yeah.
Okay, I have no problem with that. So, would you like to make that motion then?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to add I and with
That the chair has...
the authority to delegate her duties to
Okay.
another board member.
Okay, all right.
Mr. Wilbur?
Yes, sir.
In F, ensuring accountability,
Mhm.
my only concern is that the board as a whole is supposed to hold the superintendent accountable for decisions and actions, not one specific board member. I don't know if the attorney wants to weigh in on that, but that might be something that,
Did you say F, Dr.
look at
Klein?
F.
Oh,
F.
oh,
Because it's the whole board's responsibility to hold the superintendent accountable, I don't know if delineating one person is.
point of order. I made a motion. Did you second it? Did we vote for I?
We haven't done that yet.
Maybe we
so-
should vote for I,
Oh,
then
let's
we can deal with
I
yours.
apologize, I
Okay.
thought we had
All
done
right,
that.
let's go ahead. So all in favor of adding section I, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed? Okay, carries 2-0. Back to that for us.
Sorry. Anyway, what I just said, I don't know if it's appropriate to delineate one specific board member in that role rather than the full board. Because individual board members aren't responsible for accountability superintendent, the full board is.
Well, I guess my thought here is, it doesn't say the chair ensures that the superintendent, it says it helps. And to me, that would be, she does help. She's one of the 7 people that does it, so she does
Okay.
help do that. You see that, sir?
Yeah.
There's two separate sections.
I don't see a problem with that. The chair helps ensure that the board and the superintendent are accountable for their decisions.
Fair enough? Okay.
Help, yeah, I think the operative word is help.
I think the operative word is helps here, right?
And I do have to stand corrected. I just said that Ms. Mason was the vice chair when I first did that, and actually Ms. Bradford was the vice chair when I first did that, delineated that authority. Okay, all right, so, go ahead.
One other point of discussion is, wanted to know if, not that that's not happening now, but is there any, do we need something that says, giving a specific statement, giving the board the authority to act if they deem the chair has not performed their duties in a timely manner?
So basically some kind of a thing to hold the, I think that's somewhere else in policy that says, I mean, this specifically is talking about the, yeah, I think that's in a different policy, because I think this is actually telling us what the chair can do, and as far as what happens if the chair doesn't follow those rules. I mean, number one, there could always be a vote for a new chair. That's one option, but that's not one we want to do, but,
I don't think you'd start there.
yeah. that would be, yes, Ms. Mason.
I'm trying to find it, but I believe that there's a policy that talks about if choosing a different, like the election of the chair, that can be done not just in December, but
Right.
as the board deems
Yeah.
fit. So I think that that would probably be
Yeah, that's it.
a way to hold the chair accountable.
Right.
If
I
that,
agree.
I'm just saying, I don't, if, for instance, you forgot something, you may not have to, maybe just a little reminder from the board would be better than a whole new chair necessarily. And I don't think you have to go ballistic.
and I think our board is very good at vocalizing when the chair has missed something.
Yeah, in policy 2200 says, the board will elect a chairperson and vice chair for a term of 1 year or until his successor is elected. So that would give us the option to, if the person said, no, I'm just not doing it, I guess that would be one option.
Okay, well, if you're satisfied with that, then.
Okay. All right, so I'll make the motion, we carry on the amended version of 2210 to the full board. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes on to the full board for discussion. So that would be amended. I'll already read this. It is 610. Okay, so here it is, 2210. Next we have 2330.
Yes, I believe this one was mine. This is to give, to revise slightly the process of individual board members being able to add items to the agenda. Currently, I believe our language says that if a board member in a second, it will be placed on the agenda of a full board meeting within 2 meetings. This would give the option for the chair, if they delegate it, if they deem it appropriate, to instead, place that on the agenda of the appropriate committee, if that's the best place for that, discussion to start, and presuming that that committee meets within a couple of months of the time that the agenda item was put forward. That would, I know some of our committees don't meet every month, and sometimes we have some that meet, maybe twice a year, so we don't want to necessarily a board member to have to wait that long, but if it's within 2 months, I think, and it gets taken up by a committee. The other good thing I think about my language here, which is on the second page, is that it allows the board member who's making the agenda item to participate and speak at the committee, even if they're not a member.
I think that sounds good. I don't have any problem with that, so would you like to make a motion?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt policy changes indicated to this policy.
For 2330, I'll second that. All in favor of moving 2330 onto the full board, please signify by saying aye.
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 Mr.
That's
Wilbur?
2-0, yes, sir.
Is there any way to add to the, okay.
I'm kidding, go ahead, come back.
Could she also direct, like, I send a weekly memo to the board, and we meet once a month in superintendent office hours. Is there a possibility for the board chair to also route those questions to there, in case it's something that can get answered easily or quickly or informational, and not take up the board's time in a meeting?
I think for purposes of, like, say, it was placing it on the agenda for an information session, I think that would be fine, unless they're going to have a motion attached to it, which.
Right. Right. But what if it said something like certain informational items could be directed to be provided to the board by the superintendent? Just trying to think, because a lot of times you guys are feeling like we're grinding through things at a board meeting that we're not terribly quick to move things through. I didn't know if you wanted an option in there to make it a little cleaner, but.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. What verbiage would you like to?
I would say board may assign an agenda, board committee, blah, 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 or for certain informational items may be provided to the board directly through established communication means.
Okay. I'll make a motion that we take that, we add that verbiage.
I'll second that motion.
All right, all in favor of, now the amended.
Amended.
Yeah, amended 2330. Please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Carries 2-0. You got that? You got that over there? So I'm moving that over to the amended version. Heading right down the road. Next we have 3225. Close that, open that.
I believe this is Miss Brenton.
This is Ms. Brenson.
Yes. What we have noticed is that on page 33, section D, where it talks about privacy, it states that, students and employees, visitors have no expectation of privacy. Anything they create, store, send, delete, receive, or display when using the school system's network or devices, even if it's used for personal, and then it gets into the fact that we may, without notice, monitor, track, and/or log access communications and monitor file server space, access, review, copy, store, delete, contents of all the files. And then it says school system personnel may monitor online activities of individuals who access the internet via school-owned devices. So again, last paragraph there, D, by the school system's network, internet access, email systems, devices, individuals consent to have that use monitored by authorized school system personnel as described in this policy. Then when you turn over to section G, and I don't know if this got added in some of the school board associations, the state ones or not, it states that consent to the school system's use of monitoring systems to monitor and detect inappropriate use of resources. Basically, you're asking the parent to sign. So prior to using school system technological resources, students and employees must agree to comply with the requirements of this policy and the Gen AI policy and consent to the school system's use of monitoring systems to monitor and detect appropriate resources. And then at the very bottom, it also talks about the parents. In addition, the student's parents must consent to the student accessing the internet and to the school systems monitoring the student's internet activity, and electronic mailbox. So I do agree, the parent needs to give permission for consent for the student to access the internet 100%, there. But as far as the student and employee and the parent agreeing to the monitoring piece, we do that anyway. There's no way we could not. If a parent says, no, I don't want that, there's no way that kid would not have an account. There's nothing we could do. Right. It's not possible. So my recommendation was to strike out what's in red there on page 35. So we're still asking for permission. We're still notifying them of the procedures. We're asking permission of the parents just for the use of the internet and making them aware of the fact of what resources the students have access to.
All right. Perry?
Yeah, so my issue a little bit is I understand the need for network security and monitoring and stuff, and when I go to my day job at Corning, there is no expectation of privacy. This is our computer, our system, because I don't have a right to that job. But our students, on the other hand, do have a right to an education, according to public education, according to the North Carolina Constitution. So it's not, we have an obligation to give it to them. So my question is, it seems to be, I don't know, I would ask our lawyers if they could comment, but my understanding of the Parents' Bill of Rights is that some of this stuff needs parental permission unless there is you were talking about physical security monitoring, like we were talking about with the, Evidon and the AI stuff, where they draw an exception for that. So my question, of course, is if we don't give them a one-on-one device and say you can't do it, is it so baked, are these one-on-one devices so baked into the education of our students that they can't possibly pass their courses without them? Or is it just an optional nice thing. I guess I need some more clarity on that, and also some clarity on the parents' bill of rights, or whether there's a thing. Because you can't, you know, make one right contingent on relinquishing another. For instance, you know, we have a right to vote. There are certain restrictions. You have to be a U.S. citizen, you have to be 18 years old, you can't be a felon. And you also have a Fourth Amendment right not have your house searched without a warrant issued by a judge based on probable cause. They can't go around, somebody couldn't make an election, the General Assembly cannot legally and constitutionally make an election law saying that the only people who get to vote are the ones who have consented to have their house searched without a warrant. I mean, you can't do that. So likewise, can we if there really truly is a parent's bill of rights, we can't make and it's so necessary, and they can't go to school here unless they use one of these devices, or they can't successfully complete school here without using one of these devices. You're making them have to give up their parents' bill of rights just so that they can exercise their right to the free education they're supposed to get. So this is where I'm at, so maybe we can get some answers, I guess.
So I'm looking at the Parents' Bill of Rights right now, and there's nothing stated in there about this, that they're specifically talking about direct the education and care of their child, to direct the upbringing, moral religious training of their child, to enroll their child in a public or non-public school, access and review all educational records, make healthcare decisions, that's exception. Prohibit the creation, sharing, or storage of biometric scans of their child without the parent's written consent. Prohibit creating, the sharing, or storing of a child's blood, DNA, without the parent's consent. So there's nothing in there specifically. Even when it gets to the video, it actually makes the exception for safety. So there is nothing in here that states that that we are basically, by doing this, we are removing the parents' rights.
Mr. Kowalski, do you have anything?
It was a long question, David, and I think what you're asking me is, can we monitor the kids if they're using our laptops?
Without parents' permission.
Yeah, I definitely think we can. I mean, we have to. We, as the school district, we're the children are our wards when they're with us. And, you know, I think it's incumbent that if they're going to be using our laptop, our internet to access the internet, we got to monitor where they're going. So I'm not sure we'd need parental permission. The parents give us their kids during the day. And so my opinion is that we have to watch them. We have to monitor them. We have to observe where they're going on the internet. So I'm not sure we'd need consent.
What about after school hours? A lot of these kids bring them home.
It's still our laptop, and I think the idea that if we need to, we can go check that laptop to see where they've been. You know, that's my opinion.
And just as a former principal, I gotta say that I remember, especially at the middle school level, more than the elementary school level, you know, we had times that we had to go and check because, you know, unfortunately children get it themselves in bad places, and if we don't monitor them, then, you know, heaven forbid we get something about, you know, one of our devices was used for, you know, a meetup or whatever else.
I'm not, I am not at all thinking that the network security isn't necessary. I don't know about some of this isn't just internet though. I mean, I believe there's other stuff, if I'm correct, that you're monitoring as far as application use, whether emails, et cetera.
Correct. I mean, we archive all emails, but we don't go into them and look at them unless somebody makes a public information request or a parent requests something. We don't, it's not something that we look at. We are required by law to do filtering, and we have to filter on our device no matter where the device is, at home or at school, so we do that as well. As far as their internet activity, yes, we monitor it, we have access to it. We don't go into it because it's a whole list of URLs unless somebody comes to us and say, we've got a child, we suspect X, Y, and Z, could you look and see? And then that's when we go and look as well.
I'd also make the point that, you know, the landmark ruling is that the North Carolina needs to provide a sound basic education. I think as we move into this next century even further, that includes a basic understanding of technology and computers as well. I mean, can you teach a kid without one? Sure, but not in the world they're going to live in after they graduate.
I'm not suggesting that we don't use computers, but I guess, as we found out a week ago, we should have backup plan in case the computers go down, so.
Well, of course we do. Of course we do.
Yeah, and we do tell teachers, I think, you know, technology doesn't always work, sometimes stuff happens, and so the expectation is teachers do have backup plans.
And sometimes you don't use the computer for every activity you do as well. Sometimes kids will go for several days and it's not part of the lesson the teacher's built, but it weaves in and out through a good number of them.
And back to, you know, where we, you know, the elementary level, I thought it was great, and I looked over at Dr. Morgan, because he had a great lesson that I talk about all the time, but, you know, many years before the rest of us all caught up to him. But, you know, where technology was a one-stop, but, you know, the teacher was face-to-face with the children, and then the TA was face-to-face with the children, and maybe the children were reading independently out of a book as a third station, and then maybe they go to technology for the fourth station, so that it's part of the day, but it's not, you know, it's not all they do. It's not like they're, you know, having all sorts of screen time, so. Any other?
Well, no, I mean, based off Mr. Comke's assurances that there's nothing under the Parents' Bill of Rights we're gonna run afoul of, then I'm okay with the change.
Okay, I'll make a motion, we move 3225 onto the full board as provided here.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
3225 as provided will be moved up. I'm using my technology to do that, see? Thank you, ma'am. All right, next we have, oh, I ahead of myself. 2610, which is board attorney. We have a whole bunch of writing. This actually came, you gave me the sheet over here from Ms. Justice. The main change, this is from Ms. Justice. The main change I'm proposing is language specific to the duties of the attorney to inform all board members that when questions are brought to them by a board member. It is the attorney's responsibility to inform the board of what questions were asked and what responses were given, so no board member is ever blindsided. We do not, however, have language that puts the semblance of urgency or timeline in this responsibility. I would like to see an amendment to the policy that states that every board member must be informed of the question and response within 24 hours or prior to any board or committee meeting, whichever comes first. Furthermore, 2610 also places restrictions on board members in regards to prearranged access to the attorney, something that one board member vocalized to me that they did not agree with, so it might be prudent to discuss the pros and cons of the current wording. And again, from Ms. Justice. So we have in front of us the pink section. Every board member must be informed of the question and response within 24 hours or prior to any board or committee meeting, whichever comes first.
Point out, inquiry, so that's the new language in red.
Right, the pink section.
Pink.
Yes? Okay.
A little different than our usual
Yeah.
markup.
So, any thoughts on that, Mr. Perry?
I'm all for, I would like to make sure that, you know, as long as people don't abuse, individual board members don't abuse their use of the attorneys, I think we should all be able to talk to them. Obviously, if they start spending a bunch of billable hours, hey, well, what'd you spend all these on? Because, well, I talked to board member A for, 40 hours last month. Well, that'd be a problem. But otherwise, I think we should be able to do that. I just don't know, is 24 hours feasible?
Good question.
I have a ton of comment on these proposed changes. I would first say that Mr. Blanchard and I are trying not to overbill the schools. And we talk about billable hours. We're very cognizant of what we're doing and what we're putting on that bill. And it would be very easy for that bill to go crazy if we have to answer every question and then forward it to every board member. There would be massive amounts of billing on that. And so I'm not sure how to reply. I would be concerned if it's my burden to report to everybody about every text or call I got or email I get at all times, I think it would flood the heck out of you guys and double, triple our bills. So I think the burden on reporting on what you're hearing from me should fall within the board or Mr. Blanchard. I don't want to have that reporting requirement. You know, I think there's some of the board members feel that we're working for someone or we have a different agenda, and I don't think that's the case. You know, I'm not sure how to address a lot of these different issues, though. I could go on and on and on about this.
And I would say that as former chair, and since we have our chair here, you know, the chair has always been the one who's relied upon. That, you know, if you have a question, you go to the chair and say, hey, can I talk to the, you know, just so the chair is in the loop on the whole thing. I mean, I guess if we went to this, every board member is informed, then she would also hear of it through that means. But also, if I have a question and I can go to her and just ask her that question, and she says, oh, I've already been in contact with Mr. Kromke about that, and here's the answer to that, then, you know, so maybe going, you know, the current way we kind of do is we funnel through the chair, and then the chair goes to the attorneys as needed, or says, you know, go ahead and, you know, call them. You know, like if I have a question about a policy, you know, it could be that she says, you know, just go ahead and give them a call. You know, so that's the way it does now, but I guess there is a concern from Ms. Justice that, you know, that maybe that's not working as well as she would like or whatever. But I think it says right here that the chairperson or board normally decide with board members when to seek legal advice or assistance on school matters. If an individual member of the board desires to consult directly with the attorney, the board member must notify the chairperson of the legal information sought. I mean, so that's kind of the way it goes now, is it goes through her and then comes back out to her.
Yeah. The only thing I would say is to say, not that it would happen with our current chair, but I've heard some horror stories about former chairs who would keep the attorneys off of themselves and didn't want anybody else talking to them. So we don't want a situation like that. But, so I don't think you necessarily need the permission of the chair, but going through the chair and informing them, hey, I'm going to call the attorney about this, and maybe informing them beforehand, and, oh, wait a minute, I got an answer, you don't even need to call them. I mean, that's fine too, but as long as we're not saying you need the permission of the chair to talk to the attorney. Informing them seems good to me.
If I may, Chair, Wildebohr, in any attorney-client relationship, there has to be a level of trust. And when Norwood and I field questions that are of high priority that all of you need to see, I'd like to think you can trust us to bring it to you. Then there are texts or calls that are quick, off the cuff. What's your opinion on this? What's your opinion on that? And we don't bring that to the attention of the board. And I think there has to be that level of trust, because if we're required to bring everything to you guys, like I said at the front end of this, oh man, I'd have to drop everything and focus solely on reporting guidelines with you all. And we have some insurance companies that are like that. They want to know everything, and I'm fine with that because we bill them. I don't want to be that way to you all, to the district, where I'm, you know, like I said, our bills would triple. Instead of a range of 15 to 25 every month, we would be pushing 75 grand because we're having to report someone's quick question or someone's quick text. So with that, like I said, there has to be some element of trust. You guys hired us, we've established that attorney-client relationship, and you got to trust us to bring the juicy issues, the most important issues, up in front of you. And so I'm not sure how to, I'm not sure I like that the pink highlighted section where we have to, you know, you're just going to have to trust us is what I would hope you put down there.
Would you be opposed to just, like you said, if, you know, if somebody asks you a very pertinent and relevant question, and it's juicy as you described it, you're going to let us know, and you're going to let everybody know on the board. And so, is there some way of just, let's take out this 24-hour stuff and just say the board attorney shall inform individual board members of all pertinent or extremely important things or something? I don't know, I guess.
I think I could help craft some language that, that dictates that, David. Yeah.
Why don't we, then I'll make a motion that we hold 2610 in policy, and we'll let you craft some language, we'll bring it back for next month.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I
Sound
like
good?
that.
All right, I'll make that, sorry?
I just wanted to give a little bit of clarity, looking at policy already as it is. It's not just the chair that has access to the attorneys, it's also the chair of board committees that can consult with the attorneys. And already in policy, we do have the inquiry and response will be reported to all board members. So that part is already in there. Just wanted to make that note.
I second the motion.
Okay, so we'll hold 2610, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? We'll keep 2610. Further discussion. Discussion.
Hold on. I'm missing something before we go on to the next.
Okay.
I got too many papers shuffling around.
Page 40.
You better go put your tap up. Wow.
Looks like you don't have to rush, we're not going to rush.
Okay. I'll talk really fast then. Okay, here we go. Okay, going on to 4329, but I'm gonna let Mr. Perry get, you tell me when you're ready.
Let me just find I'll just pull it up in my Word.
Okay.
I had it printed out, but my notes, or my pre-meeting notes. Somehow I managed to misplace them in this big pile full of papers.
All right, so we got 4329, bullying and harassment. Mr. Perry, I think you had some of these verbiage. We're adding, discussion is adding biological sex, biologically sex-based harassment, biological sex, removing gender and gender identity, and back to biological sex, biologically based sex, biological sex, biologically sex-based, biological sex. And that's it.
Yeah, I'm going to want to withdraw all the, we've already been through
Okay.
that, sorry, to all the references to adding the word biological before sex.
Okay, all right.
My main point, though, and I think I would, again, probably like somebody to maybe craft a completely different new version of this entire policy. And maybe Dr. Barnes or Ms. Barnum or somebody can try their hand at writing them. I'm not an expert on this, but these are three things that I noted that I see wrong with the policy now. Some of the descriptions of bullying and harassment are the same as those found under Title IX, and they shouldn't be part of the definitions here, because this is, other than to say, these things over here, and these are our Title IX things, and for any Title IX, you're covered under Title IX. And then there's, so I think we should probably eliminate references to stuff that's covered under Title IX in procedure, other than to say that if it's this, see our Title IX policy. The second thing is there seems to be a contradiction in some of the language, whether the conduct of the bullying and harassment has to be deliberate or intended to cause harm, or whether it can just be, well, it's unwanted, or it doesn't have to be deliberate. So there seems to be a contradiction in some of the language here. And I don't necessarily think it has to be intentional, but we should be clear about it, that it can be, it could be both, and under what circumstances. The other thing is, these long laundry lists of protected classes that it gives as examples, I don't like. These are Title IX, yes, we have to specify what we're talking about, but this is not Title IX, this is everything other, all the bullying and harassment for any other reason, which we don't want to see, for any student, for any reason. So I think we need all these examples, because, again, example protected classes. We want every student to be free from bullying and harassment, regardless of what reason is being done on it, whether it has anything to do with, the typical protected classes or not. So, and once you define some of these as, okay, these are protected, the ones that are not listed suddenly become less important. So I think we just need to be very clear in our language that we're just not going to tolerate bullying, harassment for anybody, towards any student for any reason at all. And forget about all the protected classes, except, when it comes to Title IX, and we have to obviously mention that. So those are the three things I like to see, like a complete rewrite of some of this section, and I was hoping, so that's why I was hoping maybe I'd make a motion that we would table this till next month, and then ask Dr. Barnes or Ms. Varnum, or a combination of both, to have a stab at maybe rewriting it with those considerations I had in mind.
Dr. Barnes.
So, Julie, correct me if I'm wrong, the frame of this comes from the North Carolina School Board Association. I'm a little reluctant to, not being an attorney, obviously, to vary widely from what is acceptable throughout the state as well. A couple of responses to what you said. Just because something is Title IX doesn't mean it doesn't also fall under this policy as well. Sometimes a parent may say, I don't want to pursue it as a Title IX, but the school system still needs to be able to discipline and make appropriate choices in regards to this. You can be bullying, and it cannot be Title IX, or it can be, you know what I mean? But I just would want a little more attorney guidance on changing this dramatically from what the state uses as its clear and standard guidelines. Julie, do you have anything to add to that?
And I want to point out that the policy in general is that bullying and harassing behavior is prohibited. It's not saying some, it's saying all bullying and harassing behavior is prohibited. And then it goes into further section describing its relationship to other policies that specifically apply to bullying and harassing behavior that is prohibited by either federal law or other policies. So this policy itself is overarching in the prohibition of all bullying and harassing behaviors, but it draws the connection to others that are more precise.
Yeah, I just think if you're making that point, it's a little unclear when I read it. So it seems that I think we could be more upfront and more, and I hope that would be the case. Yeah, bullying, no excuses, no reasons. And if we're giving some examples, about stuff that's, yes, it includes this, yes, it includes this, but once you, like you said, once you include this, then you left out this, then all of a sudden, what you left out isn't as important, from a reader's perspective. So, what is specifically mentioned violates the policy, but then you don't mention something else. Yeah, I understand that you think this is overarching, and it should be. But when you read it, if you mention some things but don't mention all, then you get into a situation where the thing you don't mention isn't as important as the thing you mentioned. And so I just think maybe a little more clarity on that. Maybe it could just be reworded slightly just to make that emphasis.
Well, one option. Go ahead.
So what I'm reading here is we're trying to insert biologically,
No, we're getting rid of that.
or we're getting rid of that.
We're getting rid of that.
Okay, yeah,
We
okay.
already went through it. Okay. I'm not having that fight again.
And also, some clarity to this policy is also, like, further explained in our student handbook and our code of conduct and things like that. So when you marry those two books together, it may make it a little clearer. Because students don't go to policy, they go to our student handbook. Parents don't go to policy, they go to our student handbook. So it may be that some of that language is more clearly stated than there.
And I think that's a great point. And I think that the opening paragraphs frame the rest of the information. So if we start looking at the secondary sections on other violations, it's not as clearly framed as the opening paragraph that really talks about this is in relation to all bullying and harassment, whether it occurs on school property, on a school bus, at a bus stop, at an educational event, those kind of things. But I think looking at that and maybe highlighting some of those areas in the beginning might be helpful.
Yeah, like, if you look at B1, it says bullying is the deliberate conduct intended to harm another person, and then we're talking about harassing it. In number 2, it's harassing behavior may violence policy, even if no harm is intended to the target or no power imbalance is evident, I don't know, maybe that's supposed to be a difference between bullying and harassment. Intent, is that what you?
Yeah, and I also want to clarify, you bring up a great point. The definitions for bullying and harassment are defined in general statute.
Maybe we should define it here too, so people know what to read.
They are, the definitions inserted in this policy are from general statute.
And,
They're listed on page 45.
Yeah, also mentioned in cross references, a lot of the prohibited conduct and procedures and stuff. Well,
And these are also legal definitions of what these things are as well.
what I would like to suggest, why don't we move it on up to the full board and we can have further discussion at that point?
Yeah, I just want to have an opportunity for them to, maybe you would, want to have a conversation. Maybe there's a few things you can.
We're more than happy to look at it, and I'll pass it to
Tweak it up
Brian
a
and
little bit.
Norwood.
Make it a little-
Can you put that on our to-do list?
Well,
And then bring it back here next month then?
You want to leave it here? Okay, we'll leave it here. All right, well, we're going to do that. I'll make a motion, we leave 4329 in policy.
Second.
All right, all in favor, please signify, any other further discussion? If not, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. For further discussion. All right, so 4329 will stay. 5150 is next. Doesn't read my own writing. 4150, I'm sorry, 4150. All right,
Ah, this one.
4150 school assignment. We all probably got phone calls today about this, but we'll just mention that. All right, we got some paperwork that Dr. Barnes is handing out. We'll take a moment to glance at that.
I just wanted to have it for you.
Okay. Okay, so the discussion here, the section under lottery assignment 2, the red section now reads, "The lottery assignment plan shall detail the procedures for how the lottery assignment procedures work. All lotteries will provide an equal chance for all students to be selected. No weighted preference shall be made, save the student's geographical proximity to the school." I think that's the only section we had change, if I was correct. That's what I noted, and it is correct.
And that was sent back to us from the full board last Tuesday.
Right. Dr. Barnes, you want to discuss what you handed out? So
Just a couple of things, and there's a lot to this lottery situation. The first thing, I've got sort of two issues. One is sort of morality and one is sort of legality. So the first thing of what I provided to you is the general statute for cooperative innovative high school programming. This is a designation that's given to CTEC, WEX, and Isaac Bayer. This is a state program designed to establish joint programs with one or more high school and colleges to create opportunities for students. It specifically speaks to addressing and targeting students that are at risk of dropping out, high school students with parents who did not continue education past high school, and students who would benefit from accelerated academic instruction. Since this is a general statute, changing the lottery system for those cooperative innovative high schools, I am concerned puts those programs in danger. So the school assignment, I provided to you guys a copy of the school assignment protocols. Before you guys would vote on these, I would ask if you have read these and gone through them to make sure you understand the complexity of the lottery system as it currently sits, because this would make significant changes to it. So I didn't know if you guys had a chance to review this before this conversation.
I just had a question for Dr. Barnes.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I'm looking at this law, and my understanding is that the emission idea to use stuff like educational level and income are optional, not required. That's your understanding as well, Mr. Crum?
No, it says that the schools will target the following groups. And then it lists those specific kids. And then I've also provided a little bit of research about what factors cause students to drop out, just because I think it helps center thinking on what kind of things you should be looking for.
Is this, I mean, to me, you know, if we want to look out for kids who are at risk of dropping out and at-risk students, I'm all for that. But I don't think you could do that without an individual assessment. You can't do that with income level, zip code, and educational level. That's not going to give you an accurate picture of which child is at risk and who is not. There are probably plenty of kids in dysfunctional families who maybe live in a wealthier zip code and their parents went to college that are still at risk, you know, and just defining it based off a lottery system seems ridiculous and unfair. I mean, if you really want to help these kids, then let's reserve some spots for them and actually qualify them and actually determine yourself that these kids are indeed at risk and not just based off some demographics.
But, I mean, so I know that you didn't say this way when you say if you want to help kids, because that's obviously what we want to do. But, I mean, what this is a state-funded research-based program, and the research shows that these delineations are the most likely students to face barriers to graduation.
I don't care about statistics. I care about individual children and making sure that each one gets an equal opportunity for success. And I don't want them discriminated on just because, you know, their parent went to college, may not even be using a degree, or their parents is making a bunch of money and they're working 2 jobs just so they can help their family do better, and then penalizing them for that. I'm sorry. I'm for equal opportunity for every child, so I don't care about statistics. I care about being fair to each individual child in the family.
Just want the board to be aware of general statute.
Well, and this pertains to the entry of those 3 programs.
Correct.
But the rest of the programs, we could,
So the lottery system sort of encompasses Gregory, Snipes, Freeman, Coddington, Eaton, and the 3 cooperative high schools. Did I get them all? Yes. Now, there's a lot of complexities. Gregory only does a lottery at kindergarten, because as you go through a dual language program, you only enter into that program in the beginning. There's usually not a waiting list for Gregory, because Gregory also has the stipulation that I don't have to follow the same class size guidance. Because they constantly lose children, they don't usually gain kids back in the upper grades. So their kindergartens are usually between 23 and 25 to account for that. So Gregory's lottery is not really the issue. Snipes and Freeman also don't have an issue with their lottery. They're usually, all those kids get seated if they want to go to those schools. So you have Coddington and Eaton over here, and then the 3 cooperative high schools on the other side.
And you could tell me if I'm wrong, but if there's, besides the lottery, if there is if the parents can prove that there is a special need or an educational need, something, I'm not saying it right, but See, there's
like a qualifying factor beyond those things.
Are you
they can
talking
just
about a
automatically qualify
hardship?
for the school, can they not?
Yeah, can you explain the hardship process? I
Yeah.
think that's what.
Yeah, are you talking about a hardship?
Yeah.
Okay, so we take hardship applications, and those are determined on an individual basis. The hardship guidelines are established and have long been established by the board, and those are a part of the student enrollment and assignment handbook that you have read. And so those are what's applied specifically when an individual hardship is requested. Now, it doesn't mean that requesting a hardship is always approved. Those have to be balanced with, are there seats available? What's the, basically, what's the threshold for hardship that can't otherwise be accommodated? And then I want to mention, you mentioned something about special needs. If a student has special needs and needs to be placed in a certain program for the benefit of their progress, then the parent isn't required to request that. We make school assignment for children with special needs that meet that level of requiring a certain placement in order to make progress.
Right. So, but there's, in those particular circumstances, I'm assuming you've allotted in your calculations before you even start the lottery, that there's going to be a certain number of hardship cases that we're going to allot spaces for before we even have the lottery, correct?
So, no, because then I would be relying on that statistical data to drive me to that. So I have to look at those individually. And when it comes to specifically the lottery schools only, so the lottery schools, as far as the year-round. So Eaton and Coddington are only lottery. They don't have an attendance zone. So I don't hold any out for hardships because you don't get a hardship to those schools because we have the rest of the schools that can accommodate any hardship needs. So the board already established that those would not be hardship spots. But then we run the lottery for each of those. And then it's a tiered lottery so that it is a stopgap collection based on the needs of the families. Do you want me to explain that, Dr. Barnes?
Why don't you a little bit? Yeah.
Okay, so the first tier is mainly making sure that we sort out any family that has applied for a student to be there when they already have a sibling in the school. We don't want families to have kids in separate elementary schools. We don't want them to have to choose that or have to accept that. So the first is if you have a sibling in the school, then we capture you in the first tier. And most of the time we have more spots than that. So we collect all of those. The next tier, and this starts on, actually this is in my standard operating procedure. Right here. The next tier is for those domiciled in a specific zip code, so an underrepresented zip code. That's the next tier, so that we grab those, and we always have more slots. So let's say we have 50 kids apply to the lottery, and we have 40 seats available, right? So we capture everybody that has a sibling first, we've got those. We grab the ones from the 28401, we move that out. Then we go to family income. Again, it's self-reported. We don't try to verify this. We hope there's honesty. We expect there's honesty. So we grab those. And then the next tier is based on parent self-report of their own education. And then we grab those. Most of the time, we drop them into a main bucket because then they don't have any preferences, any preferential tiers. And then we run the lottery from that as well.
And that's the same lottery process for all the schools we mentioned?
It is the lottery process for Eaton and Coddington.
Okay.
Because Snipes and Freeman do have an attendance zone. They're not solely a lottery.
Right, thank you.
I'm going to stop you for a second. So I'm understanding that my wife and I, we both have my master's degrees, so we would be discriminated against by this lottery system because we have, so basically we're saying that because we went to school and tried our best, that my child wouldn't have the same right as a child, somebody that just graduated from high school. Is that correct?
You would have the same right, you just might not have, you won't have the same likelihood of being grabbed in the lottery because they're grabbed first. Yes. So the lottery was created long before my time, when Coddington and Eaton were established. And my understanding in my research is the weighted lottery for those schools was created to mitigate risk factors that could interfere with student success or student access to those programs. And I also think that was probably during a time when the belief was that year-round schools proved to provide a more sound educational opportunity. I don't know that we would still argue that, but that has been a part of the standard operating procedure for some time.
I was in a very intense meeting at North Topsail at one point with all the Topsail principals, and every educational mind in the room felt like year-round would be a better way to go. And we actually, of course, the parents said, you know, that ain't happening.
Oh, yeah, no,
But,
yeah.
yeah, so, I mean, even the educational minds at that point, around that room, thought
Yeah.
that, so. Mr. Perry?
Questions. Using the zip codes to the underrepresented areas, do you zip forward? Do you get neighborhood specific?
No, it's 28401 is what was established as the zip code of that catchment area.
I'm going to get myself in trouble by doing this, so I'm going to say, would you not equate some of this, for these two schools anyway, with what we have heard for the colleges and some of their requirements now that have been lessened and taken away? You know, how it used to be that, you know, I have a dear friend who was born in Taiwan, and his children were able to go and get things that my children weren't able to get because they were, you know, minorities. Would you not say that this current way it is for these two might mirror some of that?
I would say that the standard operating procedure and the student enrollment and assignment plan has been driven by board priorities and decisions, and I'm implementing.
You know, I like that. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I mean, 28401, that's downtown, is that correct?
Yeah.
So if you use downtown and you use income level and educational level, you gotta basically, you're not factoring race in specifically, but really it's a backdoor to diversity, equity, inclusion. You're doing the same thing, not with that level of precision, but you can bank on it. If you're looking downtown, poor people with a high school degree, that's probably what you're going to get. And the Dear Colleague letter that we got said we shouldn't be fooling around with these end arounds around their little band there. So I think we're risking our federal funds again if we don't nip this in the bud somehow.
I'm going to copy what Mr. Perry said and see if, could we not have two side-by-side policies? One, obviously, I mean, I'm going to say, I'm a rule follower, and there's a law that says we can't do X, Y, and Z with our high school programs. So I think we need to follow this policy. But for our elementary, you know, do we not have a high school policy for those schools and an elementary level policy for those?
All right, so statistics can cut both ways, okay? You just use statistics to make a statement about ethnicity, which may or may not be accurate either. Mm-hmm. I will tell you, at the end of the day, if you cut all my job down to the very bare bones of it, it is to graduate kids from high school with a plan for their success afterwards. Mm-hmm. That means getting every kid over the line. I think there's a fundamental question about whether or not everyone starts running from the same starting point. So I will tell you that morally, I believe that supporting kids means different things to different kids. And it means helping other kids, helping some kids who may have other things stacked against them, okay? Who may have other things that inhibit them, and giving them as much of a leg up as possible helps them get to graduation. So fundamentally, I do believe that. I would tell you that I don't see as strong of the evidence of that with the year-round model as I do with the early cooperative high schools. Those help kids graduate, period, end of story. There's no argument, you can't agree with that. And the research and the legislation proves that. So if we took those off the table, we're left with, my moral belief isn't necessarily what gets decided. It is the board's purview on that. You have a year-round principal sitting right here. I'd like to have her opinion on it as well. But I would be more concerned about us not being aware that as a district that matters. How we treat inequities as a general rule, I think is an important thing to remember. But can I ask?
Absolutely, please. Our principal of the year, absolutely. Let's
Yes,
hear
she
from
is the
her.
principal of the year, isn't she?
Yes, she is.
Hi. So this system, this tiered system that we're using, I think so far is not proving to really give, if you look at the numbers, if you came to my school and you looked at how many children are there that come from this pool, I'd say that it isn't significantly, it hasn't done anything different to our enrollment. Our school we have a nice variety of children. So it's not like our whole school is tipped over because of this tiered system. The sibling piece ends up taking care of itself along the way. So if you come from 28401 or you have a low income, your education level of your parents, those children's siblings all get in, so that kind of takes care of that too along the way. But I think it's working fine. I mean, I don't really see that there's just an outrageous advantage being given to people in this tiered system.
And I gotta say, and I think year-round school, as I just said, we had a lot of great educational minds around the table saying that is an advantage. But I think, we also I would be very concerned if we said, well, going to Eton or Cottington is the best thing in the world, and these other schools just aren't as good. Because I think there's a lot of other great schools.
Right, that's a
So,
very valid point.
I'm just going to go ahead and do it and, shoot myself in the foot or whatever. I'd like to make a motion that we hold policy 4150 in policy, and I'm not going to take it upon myself. I'm going to say, Mr. Perry, would you work with our attorney to write a second parallel policy that we can use? I agree with you 100% that we need to honor this law that's in front of us. But, I think we have two options. We can bring it on to the whole board and fight it out there.
I agree with you. Let's give them something more for you. If we're going to bring something to the board,
Let's bring
something
two
coherent.
parallel policies. One that, basically says is you keep it as it is, and we use that for the high school, but then we can write a second policy that is just for the, for the two elementary schools.
I'll second it for purposes of discussion.
Go ahead.
I'm still not convinced yet that we are required by the state to do this on the high school level, but I could be convinced otherwise. But so long as we're not saying that we shall have two different ones, that we're holding it long enough so that we can work through it.
Right. Well, and let's ask our attorney. We have this statute in front of us, 115C, 23850. We don't have that up there. So, what's your feeling on that?
I do have an opinion. When I read the words "shall target," I don't necessarily think we need to try to game the system or weigh the lottery. Why can't we target through communication at the school level the kids who we think would, hey, you probably need to apply. Maybe you're not going to go to Harvard. You'd be a great boat maker. Go to CTEC. So when I look at the lottery versus the words "shall target," I don't think they're equal, right? That's what I'm reading it. I hear very clearly Mr. Perry's voice on there can't be a weighted lottery because you can't pick favorites, or you can't make choices that because you want a certain outcome for certain people. It just has to be a blind lottery. That's my personal belief, and I'm personally glad that we're headed in that direction with our government. There can be no favoritism for race, color, socioeconomic status, where you come from, because there's people who are rich that live in poor neighborhoods, people who are not educated who live in the better neighborhood. So I'm a big fan, and I believe in the idea of no weighted lottery, just a blind lottery. But at the same time, I feel we can adhere to this law, this statute, by targeting through communication, through the process, perhaps. Dr. Barnes could have your principals look at those kids who best be served at those high schools and encourage them to apply.
We do that, go ahead.
Yeah. But at the
Yeah,
same, but at the same time, the lotteries, in my humble opinion, should be blind.
So I think I want to separate this out and maybe can offer a little bit of a simpler solution than a whole separate policy. So for one, yes, Mr. Kromke, we do make sure that we are recruiting students who would need this type of opportunity to increase their likelihood of success. And for the cooperative innovative high schools, it's about the rubric. So it's not necessarily lottery, it's about the number of seats. I mean, it could kind of feel that way, but it's about the number of seats and where you fall on the rubric. And if you're, potentially going to be first time college goer, you rise to the top on that. So I think that's separate and based on our interest in participating, or our agreement in participating with Cooperative Innovative High School. But I think if the board is no longer interested in maintaining weights for the lottery, and that would say specifically for the schools that have weighted lotteries, for elementary, specifically Eaton and Coddington, I think the simplest way to address that is making a statement that weighted lotteries will not be utilized aside from participation in the Cooperative Innovative High School application process. So
Which is more like a rubric anyway than it is
exactly
like a choice.
Exactly.
Now, is the wait list at WEX, CTEC, and Isaac Bear, what is their typical wait list like?
Every year is probably a little bit different, and this might fall more in Dr. Hamilton's territory. I help with the standard operating procedure, but then Gene Hall works through those processes. But it's going to depend on the number of kids that apply, and that also makes that cutoff a little bit different because the cutoff is going to be based on, you can't say what's the cutoff score to get into WEX or CTEC. It's going to be based on how many seats you have and how far down you go, and then there's your cutoff score.
But it sounds like it's not a lottery system. It's more based on need anyway.
Yes, it's a rubric and slot system as opposed to lottery. But the weighted lottery for the year-round schools and the restart schools is a board-determined priority, and I think that could just be delineated in this same policy and doesn't require a second policy right. Just remove weighted lottery.
Well, so what you see there, would you say that that's enough? Or do you think maybe we should have an extra line that says something about?
I would rule out the Cooperative Innovative High School application process.
So just add like a line saying, except for.
And you don't need the second section about save the student's geographical proximity to the school because we have districting, and that covers all of that. So no weighted preferences shall be made in lottery. This does not include the Cooperative Innovative High School application process.
I do want to bring something forward that Ms. Barnhart mentioned to me that she was concerned about, and one way she wanted. So I'm not saying I'm necessarily for, but I'm not as opposed to it as some of the other reports. If the student was currently attending a failing school, whether they should be getting a leg out. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I wasn't prepared to talk about that, but I think Whatever the priorities of the board are for any, again, that would be a weight. So it would reapply a weighted preference.
I'm just going to get you.
I would also put more of my effort towards making sure we didn't have any failing schools, because if you apply because you're at a failing school, that solves your problem, but doesn't solve the problem.
Oh, I agree.
I think our efforts and energy should be put
I'm just
towards not
bringing it up.
having any.
I just want to bring it up. And then I got one final question. Like you said, you could do a hardship, but then you've already done the lottery, and then the hardship just gets whatever's remaining after the lottery's done, if I'm understanding what you said earlier. Why isn't it that the ones...
Mr. Perry, I'm sorry, because I don't think that's what you said.
Right. So a hardship has to be balanced with, is this the only way to solve, by approving the hardship, is that the only way to solve the real hardship that exists for the family? And if there's any other way to solve that, then I can't approve those. But hardships are not based on the number of seats available. Hardships are based on how serious is the situation, and is there no other way to help this family make this right?
So I guess my overall question is, if we've got kids who are at risk or really need this, and we want to help them, and of course we do, I mean, instead of giving them a weight in the lottery, can't we just take them if they meet a certain level of at-risk factor?
Well, the at-risk factor needs to identify itself to a very specific location. Why is this the only location this hardship would work at, is one question, I think, what you were trying to say. But also, there are class size limits and enrollment limits at schools, right? Like, what's Coddington's capacity? What is it? 44. And how many kids are there in the building now? 42. So that's a part of that too, where if I can't cram them into a classroom, I don't know where to put them.
And you can't go over class
I
sizes.
guess I was just, wondering why you wouldn't take those people first, and then if the spot's left over, then...
Well, because we don't know at first. Hardships come up all along. I mean, we don't always know when a hardship's coming.
Right, and we don't put a limit. We don't say you can only tell us you have a hardship between, April and June. Hardships can be submitted any time of the year because they may present themselves at any point in time.
And I will say too about the, believe me, I'd like to have another discussion on another day about, I would like to see a year-round middle school at some point, and if we need another year-round elementary school in order to feed it, so get that going. But I'd like to see that coming up. But there's a lot of kids from, like my grandson, whose father lives in Colorado, and he's lucky enough to go to college, and for him, it has nothing to do with how much money his father or mother make or any of that stuff. It has to do with his father lives in Colorado, and you get to see him a lot more often due to the more frequent breaks instead of just have to wait till summertime to see his father. So, and those kinds of family issues go well beyond the socioeconomic factors.
But that's what the hardship is for, right? And obviously, the lottery worked in your grandson's case.
But I guess my point is that you could have rich people that still have a parent living in California or something, and they could stand and benefit from going to that school just as much as poor kids.
This is not, I want to make sure this is not about rich or poor. This is about providing a level playing field. And I don't want to make that indicator that is an indicator of whether, the only indicator, whether kids can be successful or not.
Ms. Tedeschi, would you read the verbiage that the department shared with us? And then we'll go back.
That she was suggesting that the last part of this last sentence, save the student's geographic proximity to the school, be removed. But unfortunately, I didn't get the rest of what you wanted. So no weighted preferences?
Yes, so I think all of the red can remain until the last sentence and leave in, no weighted preferences shall be made, remove the rest of that, but I would make a statement that this does not include the cooperative, innovative high school programs.
Okay, I will make a motion that we move that verbiage as part of policy 4150, I'm having trouble with numbers today, onto the full board. Is there a second?
I'll take it for purposes of discussion. I would like to still, though, move the conversation, hold this policy. We can move this particular amended version up to the board for full consideration, so that at least we can deal with the elementary schools. I still think we need a further conversation about high schools.
Okay. Well, we can always come back to it.
And so I'd like to have it remain, 4150 remain in policy. We can have a further discussion about the legalities of all that, but still send this part up to the board. Are you okay with that?
I don't know how we can do that, because it was one policy, so we either send the policy.
Well, we can amend it again.
Oh, yeah, we can bring it back, and yeah, we can definitely bring it back. All right, so we'll move 4150 as amended onto the board, and then we can bring it back if the board chooses, and there's the chair, so she can do that if she so chooses. So, we have a first and second on that. All in favor of moving 4150 as amended onto the full board, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, we're moving that on, and now we should be able to kind of sprint through the last bit of this.
Maybe.
The rest of it's just all minor.
Except for one.
All right. All right, so we got 1300, 1500, 1600, 1700, 1742, 1760, 2500, 7335, and 7820. All with minor changes. I'm going to skip over 9120 because I think that's the one you want to talk about. So we'll start with 1300. Just basically moving the word discrimination and grievance procedure and sexual harassment, et cetera. Make a motion to move 1300 onto the full board. Is there a second?
I'll second for purposes of discussion. Just have a brief discussion on it.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
So, did we finally get a verdict? Because I know we were talking about, the titles of these things are Title IX, sexual discrimination. We had a discussion in our last policy committee regards to that it's not just romantically based, it's sex. Should we be changing the title to sex harassment versus sexual?
And I believe this all came from the School Boards Association, but Mr. Kromke, your thoughts on that?
I wasn't paying attention, I'm sorry.
Oh. He's asking, like, for 1300, whether Title IX, sex harassment, or sexual harassment. And this did come, I'm correct, from the School Board Association, correct?
In some references, they were referring to sex harassment, in others, sexual harassment.
Right.
Which is good. One's more broad than the other.
What do you think there, Mr. Kromke?
Stick with the sex harassment.
But just, and not to add the extra, what the School Boards Association said?
Where?
1300? 1300, Title IX, section,
That's
and it used to say, sex discrimination, but now it says sexual harassment. But I'm just, we kind of usually follow what the...
I think we adhere to what the NCSBA has recommended.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so, again, they've changed it from sex discrimination to sexual harassment. All right, and I'll make a motion to carry 1300 on to full board. Is there a second?
No, second, I guess.
All right. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. All right. And like I say, I purposely skipped over 9120. We'll come back to that. 1500, pretty much the same thing. I make a motion to move that on to the full board.
I'll second that.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Very good. Moving and grooving now. 1600, governing principles. Pretty much the same thing. All in favor, please. I make a motion to move 1600 onto the full board.
I'll second it.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We're just moving and grooving here. I like that. 1700. Same thing. Discrimination out and sexual harassment in. All in favor of, I make a motion, we move that to the full board.
Second.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 And Mr. Wheeler, for those folks watching at home, this is just cleaning up the cross-referencing. This is not changing any substantive policies at all.
Absolutely, yes, you're correct. 1742, just adds in some stuff at the bottom of section 6. Deletes the word discrimination, grievance procedures, and bullying and harassment behavior prohibited, and adds in sexual harassment, reporting process, sexual harassment grievance process. So again, exactly as Dr. Barnes just said. I'll make a motion we carry 1742 onto the full board. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of moving it on to the full board, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, passes 2-0, 2-0, 2-0, 2-0, 2-0, and 2-0. I've been reporting that. I'm catching up. Prohibiting 1760, just has some stuff in the cross references, as in Title IX sexual harassment, prohibited conduct and reporting process. I make a motion we move that on to the full board at 1760. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes 2-0. 2500, hearings before the board. I don't see where we've changed. Let me see. Gotta be here somewhere. Oh, there it is, all the way at the bottom. Pretty much the same thing, a cross-reference, Title IX sexual harassment grievance policy, deleting Title IX sex discrimination, so not much of a change there. Make a motion we carry that on to the full board. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Carries 2-0. We'll be moving pretty fast here. Employee uses of social media. I lost the whole thing. There it's back. If we go back to section 10, again, sexual harassment, getting rid of sex discrimination and making sexual harassment. I make a motion we carry that out to the full board and some cross-references. Is there a second?
I'll second for purposes of discussion.
Go ahead, sir. You want to discuss?
No, just want to have a chance to quickly look at it.
Okay. All right, so,
I'll second it, yeah.
okay. All in favor of moving 7335 onto the full board, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, passes 2-0. And finally, 7820, personnel files. I have to read back to the cross-references.
Mhm,
I
yeah,
didn't
going
run this
out.
one. Didn't write this one down. Yep, cross-references, again, deleting discrimination and grievance procedures and adding in sexual harassment and reporting process. I make a motion we carry that on to the full board. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of 7820 to the full board, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. And all opposed? Passes 2-0. So we'll go back up to 9120. This is bidding for construction work, and there's a whole section deleted here.
Well, some of that was what I originally had put in, that was in the red crossed out. Now, I believe the part in blue was proper Miss Sutton, if I'm correct.
Ms. Sutton?
I can't believe you guys are correct. I think this is one that went to the board last or earlier this month and it was sent back, but I wasn't clear on why it was sent back.
I don't remember. Do you remember, Ms. Mason?
I don't recall, but you also were not present. at that
Oh, that's right.
meeting.
Yeah, I wasn't there.
Oh, that's right.
That's why I don't remember. I was starting to lose them. I don't remember.
I was there and I don't remember either
I think
why
I was
we sent
watching
it
that.
back.
I don't remember. Dr. Barnes, do you remember that?
Well, I guess, I think it might be the concern about whether or not this is going to get us sideways with general statute.
Oh, because the original language from general statute, and we had adjusted it, so it took out some of those things. That was the conversation, that's true.
And again, I'm sorry, Mr. Perry, my understanding is that we can make a more restrictive policy than the state requires, but we can't go less.
Right.
So the suggestion now from you, Ms. Sutton, is to put the blue words in, correct?
I believe to, what was deleted, to bring that back and leave it as it was, I believe, was the recommendation, because that matches general statute.
Correct?
That's precisely the language that, again, getting I think diversity, equity, and inclusion, it might match the statute, but if we don't get rid of it, we're also looking at violating the equality. So, at least this language, they're still going to do the reporting requirements. They're still going to be reaching out to all local businesses, including minority-owned businesses. Am I correct? And encouraging them to come. But we, at least in our policy, don't have to have language that just on its face seems like it's going to fly right in the smack of the contradiction to your colleague letter.
I don't think there was a change from, I think Darrington and Smith does the board policy revisions. I don't think we had an update to this policy from them, if I'm correct. I don't think they had a language change.
The other thing that I wanted in here, which I think you said you were going to encourage them to do anyway, was if we could create a preference, and then I was told that maybe we can't, is to have a preference for local businesses versus just North Carolina businesses. But that was in the original red. I wanted to create if anybody was going to get a preference, it should be our local community businesses.
And the general statute specifically says we are not allowed to do that.
Yeah, somebody needs to talk to our legislature. All right. So I don't really see any problems with the blue one myself, but I don't know what do you think, Mr. Wildebohr? But you could just go back to the original, leave it as it is right now, but I still think I think you do have some language that is currently in there, because we're not seeing the current language in this thing, or maybe in the deleted section.
I think the
It's over on the
deleted
right.
section.
Yeah.
Superintendent, on behalf of the board, shall certify good faith efforts have been made to increase participation in construction contracts by minority-owned and female-owned businesses as required by policy 9125, participating by minority businesses. The board will grant North Carolina resident firm providing architectural, engineering, surveying, construction management, at-risk service, design build services, or public-private construction services a preference over a non-resident firm if the home state of the non-resident firm has a practice of granting a preference in its residential firm over North Carolina resident firms. Any preference granted to a resident firm shall be in the same manner, the same basis, and the same extent as the preference granted by the non-resident firm's home state. School system's bid documents shall require that non-resident firms disclose and describe any construction contract preferences granted by the firm's home state. That's what it had.
And I think some of that stuff in the beginning is going to get us in trouble with the executive orders.
Well, to some extent, it's hard because mom and dad are fighting, right? The federal government and the state are in disagreement here.
That's what I was going to comment on. Right now, we have a state mandated section. We're following state law here, but at the same time, we've got new directives from the federal government. I'm inclined to suggest we leave this in committee for the time being and watch this issue play out. I don't feel we need to be trendsetter in either direction. And I think it will play out. And for the time being, though, I would just leave it as is and leave it in committee until we get some dictation from somebody. either the
Let me be
state level
clear, I
or-
won't survive in state or federal prison. So I'd rather not have to pick between them.
Okay, Mr. Conley.
Yeah, I heard, the shorter guys don't make out. I'm sorry, I just gave you some levity. Mr. Perry?
Mr. Conley, is there any litigation around this that we should be aware of that's going through courts right now? Or do we have an ETA on this maybe?
No, not that I'm aware of right now, but I do feel like we're not the only people talking about the disparity between the federal government and the state law. It's going to have to be worked out.
I think I'm going to go with Mr. Kropke's wisdom. I'm going to make a motion that we hold policy 9120 in policy. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Passes 2-0. Bidding for construction work will stay with us. So we have 2610, 4329, and now 9120 all with us. And I think we've run out of fun things to do. So I'll make a motion that we adjourn. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.